and thank you for joining us today for this fantastic presentation that we have coming up from Sajjad. Just as shown in the video, I'm Karima Kiat, so I'm the Marketing Manager for Graduate Mentor, and I'm excited for all of us to learn about what AI means to us. So just while Sajjad is speaking, please make sure to keep yourself on mute, but please type any questions you have in the chat, and then we can cover them at the end of the little Q&A. So this webinar is being recorded as well, so you do have the chance to come back to this if you need to in the future. But so on that note, Sajjad, would you like to take over?
Absolutely, and thank you again for having me here, and hopefully you'll find this insightful and helpful. So let me share my screen first. Give me a second. Choose the right presentation. That's always important. Cool. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see that.
Brilliant. I'm not going to go into PowerPoint mode or full screen because I've got a massive resolution, so it's just going to compress it for you. So I'll just keep it here if that's okay with everyone. Great. So again, the topic for today is AI, what it means for you, but actually what it means for all of us, to be honest. I'm Sajjad. You can call me Saj. And I've had a bit of a, unorthodox, let me just get it connected, a bit of an unorthodox entry into AI and data in general. I actually trained as an accountant. I grew up in the States, and I trained as a certified public accountant, worked for one of the big accounting firms. And throughout it all, most, if not all of my stakeholders were asking for data-driven facts. And, this is almost 17 years ago. And we were not as, how should I say, as equipped as we are today to deliver that at scale. And so it kind of pulled me into what I call this jet stream of activities and learning and self-discovery. And the more I got into it, the more I realized this is where I wanted to be. So it all started with, obviously, people asking me, well, what's happened, what's going on, and so on. And it meant pulling data together from different systems, visualizing it in Excel as best I could. As I was doing that and building these dashboards in Excel, I realized maybe Excel wasn't the right tool. So I kind of pulled and pushed me into the business intelligence world, where I was kind of working with Tableau, and actually Tableau probably didn't even exist then, but I would say more business objects. And I'm trying to remember, I guess, MicroStrategy. And then eventually when Tableau came up, I adopted that as well. And that was great to a point in time. Then I realized it was only like 50% of the questions, 50% of the answers that they were that I was giving them. They wanted to know then what is going to happen. And that part was missing. And so, again, I realized that was a learning for me that I needed to pick up. So I pushed myself into projects where data science was being kind of taken a bit more seriously, where we're building these models, these algorithms. I literally learned. I told them, look, I might be a drain on your resources, but just leave me alone and I'll do my own thing. I won't bug you, but I just want to learn. And I carved out my own time. Back in those days, we didn't have Udemy and Coursera and all of that. I think maybe we did, I just don't know. But I ended up buying all those dummies book and all of those things, just started reading them. And gradually over many years, built up that knowledge where I started coding on my own and started writing these algorithms using Python, scikit-learn, all that kind of stuff. And that was my journey, basically. Today, I work for a company called IAG Loyalty. I'll talk about it in a second, but where I lead the AI work streams as well as the data-driven innovation work streams. But again, I had a very different journey. Like I said, I wasn't a physicist or a mathematician. I just had the curiosity to learn and move forward with it. In terms of IAG Loyalty, I think it'd be good to just give you a 1-minute blurb, I guess. Every time you fly BA or Iberia or Qatar, etc., you collect this currency. It's known as Avios. And every time you want to book a redemption flight, then you're able to spend that currency. So that's who we are, essentially. We have partners. We're part of the broader IAG group, which is owned by Qatar. But we also have non-air partners. There are about, I don't know, a few thousands of them. You can go to the BAE store or to the e-store, and you're able to collect through those partners. And then you're able to redeem them or burn them through any of those air partners like BA, etc., and go to Mauritius or wherever you want to go, but also to hotels and car hire. For example, Avis, if you want to book a car rental. And also with some merchants, global merchants, where you can actually spend your currency and buy goods. So for example, go to Doha, you're able to spend that at the duty-free shop in Doha. So that's who we are. Every hour, we have about 13 million currency or avios collected and about 900 flights redeemed. We also have people spend about 6 million collecting this. So collect, I think overall throughout the year, it's about 50 billion or so. And what we know across the board, people who interact with this ecosystem tend to be way more loyal than those who don't. So people who collect avios tend to be 5 times more loyal than those who don't. So that's enough about the company. I've kind of broken this presentation into 2 sections. The first is about a journey through AI, not my journey, it's just a journey through AI. And the second part is really what it means for you and how you can influence it, how you can be part of it, and so on. This image, I created this using DALL-E, and my prompt was, show me a journey through AI. And I was, a bit surprised because they had all these choppy waves and this really scary looking sky. There is a little light in the horizon, but this electric blue color, which always shows up. By the way, this also showed up with the brain. And then I had to specify, I don't want to see a brain anymore because everything AI related has a brain because it has to do with deep learning, but enough of that. But it's really interesting how these large language models that actually power ChatGPT, that have been fed some of these images, think of what a journey through AI could look like. So just hold on to that thought as well. I don't think Professor Hawking needs any introduction. A few years before he passed away, he gave a speech about AI. And what he said was, we don't know if we're going to be helped by it, ignored by it, or sidelined by it, or conceivably destroyed by it. And this was picked up by the press and has been sensationalized a lot. There's a lot of misinterpretation. There's some good interpretation of it in terms of guardrails and all of that. But there is a lot of sensationalism that's been built around this. And I just want you to hold on to this quote, and we'll get back to it. And hopefully I won't forget. So remind me, Karima, if I do. The history of AI is not ChatGPT. The history of AI in general, in its broadest context, has been on for almost 500 years, if not more. And it all started with this mechanical calculator. The modern age of AI is from the 1950s onwards with Alan Turing and his Turing test. But throughout from 1960s up until the early 2000s, there were, I don't even know how many, I think some people said 10, some people said 7 AI winters. These AI winters meant that, while people had this amazing idea and this hypothetical use case and all the things they wanted to do, the capability in terms of machine to do that just wasn't there. So while government would fund you 1 year and 2 years later will take away that funding, and majority of these use cases were actually funded by the government, right? And so they kind of went through this, this AI winter, which was on and off all over from the 1960s to the 2000s. And then something happened with 2000, year 2000, after the Y2K episode, all that kind of stuff. Compute started to grow because of cloud computing, Google Cloud, GCP, then you had, of course, Microsoft Azure, you have AWS, all of that. It meant that people could do things a lot faster, and you had the capability to not spend a lot of money, but still spend some money and be able to spin out a platform fairly quickly. And that was a game changer. That meant that you could start now playing out these hypothetical use cases using some GPU with this, which is a graphical processing unit, to process some of those transactions to see what it actually means. Fast forward to 2019, Microsoft made a $13 billion investment in OpenAI. And it meant that OpenAI could now use all the cloud capability that Microsoft has. And I think that was a game changer. Today, we live, I think, at an inflection point. This is the AI for the masses. AI has been around before that in terms of machine learning. All the personalization messages you get through Amazon before 2022 was obviously driven by AI. But 2022 onwards is how people, I think people are kind of interacting with ChatGPT in natural languages, and how AI is interacting back with us is very different. I think it's inflection point. This is the AI for the masses. This is something where we all now have to be a lot more aware, and we have to play an active part in terms of what happens next. So the person who we need to thank about coming up with the term the acronym AI, artificial intelligence, actually John McCarthy. In 1955, again, this was a long time ago, in 1955, John McCarthy, with some of his fellow researchers in a university in the US, came up with this thought leadership around machines having cognitive intelligence, and that is where they came up with the word AI. Now, John McCarthy is also famous for something else. He came up with a second oldest programming language called Lisp. I've never used it before. The first, I think, is Fortran. So it's quite interesting how these things have evolved over time, right? But anyway, I just thought you'd know who one of the godfathers of AI is. The most common thing I always get from people is, and they ask me is, well, what is AI, right? And the funniest answer to that is, with everything having a definition, AI doesn't really have a definition. There's an understanding. And the reason why AI doesn't have a definition is because AI is changing. What you think of AI or what thought of AI a few years ago isn't really what AI is today. So this keeps on changing, and therefore thought leaders and scientists cannot come up with a definition. What they have is an understanding, and the understanding is the ability of machines or software to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. And that's why every time you search for AI, you'll see a brain. Funny enough, I still can't figure out why does it have to be blue, but that's the whole separate story. Now, what is human intelligence really, right? It's about learning from experience. It's about communicating in natural language. So let's take learning from experience, right? You interact with ChatGPT. I think many people use it today, right? 3.5. I use 4. You have to pay for it, but 3.5 is good enough. And when you don't like a response, or you like a response, you get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I forget what the other one is, but it's let's say thumbs up, thumbs down, or you don't do anything. Now, every time you do a thumbs up, imagine in the system it does a +1. You thumbs up, thumbs down, it gives a -1 score, and that is how it's learning. It knows that the response it gave you is better, so that I go in and ask a similar question, it'll try to curate the same response back to me. And that's how we interact with people, especially with my kids, right? I need to get them to do their homework, I'll give them a cookie or something, right? And it's very similar how we interact with these languages. It's very similar how they interact with us in natural language. And so this is what AI is about. It's about that human intelligence, the human minds, the cognitive intelligence that we have. Cool. So you might be thinking then AI is a thing. AI is one thing. Not really. It's an umbrella of many things. Within AI, we have something called machine learning. It's been around for a very long time. I actually don't remember how long, but I've been in this world for a very long time to know it's been around for a long time. We also have deep learning, and then now we have something called generative AI. If you just look at machine learning, for example, it's very traditional in nature in that you can feed a very narrow input and get a very narrow output. So I've got an example of a bank here where you say, okay, I'm going to ask the output in terms of who will default or who will pay the loan, and the input would be a credit score, right? It's in and out, very simple, kind of. Deep learning is a bit more complex in that it'll still give you a very narrow output, but it can consume huge amount of data, and it could be absolutely unstructured. It could be videos, multimodal, it could be text, it could be just about anything. And you could say, okay, I've given you a bunch of pictures, dogs, cats, alligators, etc. And I want you to come back and tell me, are they the same or different? And I can also give another prompt and say, by the way, something that looks like this is a dog, something that's like that is a cat. And it'll come back, look at that, run the model, and come back to you and say, okay, yep, 15 of them are cats, 20 of them are dogs, and the rest are alligators, or something like that, right? So again, it's very unstructured in terms of input, but very narrow in terms of output. Generative AI is very different. You can actually feed an image to Gen AI, one of those tools out there, and have it come back to you and explain what is really going on in this image. So let's say you feed an image of a monkey dancing on a tree, and it'll come back and say, okay, it's a monkey, it looks quite furry and blah, 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 and it's dancing on a tree, which is great. And then you can say also, well, by the way, why don't you write a poem about a monkey dancing on a tree, which I'm sure you want to see, but I don't have one. But it will come back and actually write a poem and say, this is what the monkey did, and all that wonderful stuff. So you can imagine how you interact with it. Could be multimodal, that is images, text, video, etc. and it could come back to you in many different things. It could be an image, it could be a text, could be a video. I don't know if you're up to date with OpenAI and what OpenAI Sora is. OpenAI Sora is basically text input and you get video out. It's still in research, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. It will have huge implications in terms of creativity, in terms of videography and all of that kind of stuff. But I think we'll kind of get into that conversation later, anyways. But what's also interesting is that just because we live in the world of Gen AI, it doesn't mean that machine learning goes away. On the right-hand side, you can see you have traditional AI. I call it traditional. Maybe there's another term for it, but I think it's traditional AI. So you've got something like, let's say, anomaly detection and fraud. So you've got a baseline, and you know there are anomalies left and right, and those are the ones that you need to focus on, right? And it learns over time, so it kind of highlights those anomalies for you. On the other hand, with generative AI, you have content generation, you have image generation, you have AI that actually can write a very powerful email for you, right? But they also kind of overlap, they help each other out. So you have a traditional AI, let's say machine learning, where you're personalizing customer offers, so Amazon Next Best Action, for example. On the other hand, you have Gen AI can actually look at that data and say, oh, by the way, I think you will like this image. So actually create an image for you of something that you like, and will write a blurb for you and send that blurb as an email to you or a chat message or in WhatsApp or something like that. So this is where they kind of come together and help each other out as well, okay? AI is also not, as I mentioned earlier on, static. AI is evolving. Today, we live in the world of artificial narrow intelligence. This is an intelligence, this is a machine learning, machines that are good in doing one thing. ChatGPT, really good in using large language models to interact with you. You've got Alexa doing something great. It didn't come up, which is interesting, thankfully. I thought it would actually start talking to me. But we've got Siri doing something similar, and so on and so forth. There are tons of these right now. Computer vision in Tesla cars that can actually drive for you. So that's narrow intelligence. If you look at OpenAI's charter or mission statement, they're not about narrow intelligence, they're about general intelligence. General intelligence AI is good as us, right? Imagine AI that knows what you want. When you're walking to, let's say, your home, it turns on the light, turns on the music. At the same time, it helps your kid do her or his homework. At the same time, can actually cook a meal for you. It's very gentle, very similar to an assistant like Jeeves from back in the days. If you don't remember, you've read some of those novels. So it's kind of like that, right? So that's artificial general intelligence, a very simplified form, and I'm absolutely simplifying it. There is something out there, right? And this is a hypothetical situation, maybe 1,000 years from now, something called artificial superintelligence. This is a form of AI that has evolved into being smarter than us. And this is the inflection point in society, philosophically, realistically as well, where we should and we will be impacted by it in many ways. Not that AGI won't impact us, ASI has huge implications for our own survival. And when Professor Hawking was talking about, I think, this is my interpretation, what he meant, what he was saying is that AGI unchecked, without guardrails, without any what's the word I'm thinking about? Let's call it guardrails. You will end up in a situation where ASI is out there and it will and may actually destroy us. And I think that's what he was talking about. So we all have a part to play. Today, we live in the world of ANI. We need to influence AGI so that ASI is actually a helper and not a destroyer of us. Okay? A couple of good examples of artificial superintelligence. I don't know if you watched the movie Creator. It's brilliant, by the way. I'm a big sci-fi fan, as you can see from the Millennium Falcon behind me. But in the Creator, the AI beings, they lived with humans at the same time. And the AIs actually even had a God and a belief in that system. It's completely, you have to get your head around it. And you may think it's not possible. I think it is. It is going in that direction. There are many other movies. There was a situation, I think, in Star Wars, forget which one it was, where C-3PO had been all cut up and he was thinking about his own existence, the broader, situation that he was actually living in, very similar to us. But anyway, we can talk about that forever. So if you speak to a lot of these consulting companies, this is McKinsey, they came up with approximately 4.4 trillion in opportunity efficiency gains and revenue, incremental revenue by 2060. A huge amount. For those who know, the GDP of UK is about what, 3.5, maybe close to 4. We're talking about basically spinning out a whole new UK somewhere in the ocean somewhere, and saying this is how much it's going to generate in terms of revenue. It's crazy, crazy numbers, right? And what's also happened is that the forecast for 2060 has been pulled forward. So what they're saying now that, by the way, yeah, it was 2060, but we think it's now going to happen 20 years earlier, maybe even 30 years earlier. It's crazy. And these consulting companies, BCGs, McKinsey's, they are at the board level. So they're talking to the board. They convince the board that they need to do something because, first mover advantage, you get to your revenue first, get that pie first before everybody else does. They then push the C-level, who then push people like me, to do something. And, Saj, what are you thinking about? What is our strategy? So there's a lot at this point in time catching up to do. Most companies, if not all companies, are catching up. This AI, I mean, the pendulum has shifted. The Pandora's box has opened, basically. And everybody's running to figure out how it's going to impact them in a good way and in a bad way, okay? And the bad way, I mean, the challenges, all kinds of challenges, right? There is an issue, an inherent issue with bias, which we'll talk about very soon. There are obviously the ones you get to hear about the most probably is the loss of jobs. I mean, yeah, absolutely. There's no other way of putting it. Jobs will be lost, no question about that. There's cybersecurity issues, all kinds of stuff, and we haven't even talked about quantum, right? And quantum and AI together have a power, exponential power to do things and to make things happen that we haven't really even imagined, right? Maybe ASI will happen sooner than we think. So yeah, so there are dangers. And so what's going on broadly then in the ecosystem, across the EU, the US, etc. The EU, for example, have come up with the EU Act, also known as the AI EU Act. Essentially, it's a risk-based approach. You have prohibitive use cases, things that absolutely no-go. And then you have, high, medium, and low, kind of acceptable in some cases. But then on the other hand, you have all these use cases, right? And the challenges, oftentimes that happens, is that these regulatory environments kind of kick in so hard that these use cases that were actually helpful, you can't do because it's a gray minefield and companies almost are so risk averse to it that they don't want to even experiment in that use case. So I think we're going to find this challenge for the next few years until we find this equilibrium where you have the use cases that will actually make a lot of sense, will actually be efficient, will actually help us. And at the same time, you have the regulatory environment meant to actually kind of safeguard us at the same time, right? So hopefully you're with me. I think we did okay with time, hopefully. And this was the first part, just to give you a wide view of what's really going on in the world of AI. The second part then is about you, me as well. I think I should have said, what does it mean for us? Thinking about it now. So what does it mean, right? Well, let's start here. Firstly, anytime you use, and I'm going to pick on ChatGPT because it's the one that gets used the most, and Bard and all the rest of it, Anthropic has one called Cloud and so on. But you have to really respect your privacy in that any data you actually send to ChatGPT and others, it is used to train the model. So if you're sending in PII information, your personal information, it is going to be anonymized, I know, but it is used to train the model. And that is still a scary thought because we know that there are capabilities coming down, that potentially could de-anonymize that data. It's very likely. And I think, my view on this is that why even bother? Why would you even want to send your personal information, why date of birth, your name and all of that, address into these systems? You don't need to. You can get a lot more out of it without doing any of that. Okay, that's number one. The second thing I would say is the information in these systems in these large language models, given the amount of information they need to actually pull in. I think from memory, ChatGPT-4 has 1.7 trillion parameters. I mean, that's a significant amount of data, right? So in order for them to stay current, it takes a lot of processing, but they're never going to be, at least, well, they will be, but not yet, current as quickly as you want it to be. So GPT-4 is current as of 23rd of April from memory, 2023. I think GPT 3.5 is June 2021. I could be wrong, but it's not current. So you need to be aware of that. So when you're actually trying to get information off of any current events, it may tell you that, yeah, we can provide that. At the same time, it may come back and just give you an answer, which is number 3. Large language models without guardrails have a tendency, let's call it a feature in software engineering, a feature to hallucinate. And that's a technical term. They hallucinate. They will come up with an answer because they don't know without any guardrails to say no, because it's based on probability, it's based on statistics. So when you type a question, it tries to figure out what you have written to what would be next. And so it tries to do that over and over again and then come up with something. And then you're like, well, this is great. And it's telling me something, absolutely something that I can believe in. The reality is it just made it all up. So we need to be very careful about this, about the hallucination. Okay, and as a matter of fact, I mean, I was reading about this, I think a few months ago. There was a study done, I think in Europe somewhere, where they looked at people and their interaction with these GPTs, these chatbots, versus the interaction with their own queries in Google and so on. And people were believing the answers they were getting from ChatGPT more than what their queries was actually telling them, meaning they're actually doing their own research, they're reading the article, they believe that less than what ChatGPT, after compiling everything, will come back to you. Now, if you look at Bing and so on, they will also give you a link where they got that information from, which does help a bit, to be honest. But still, don't just believe everything. So rule number 1, be safe. Take it, be really safe and really understand how these systems work. Number 2, so I spent about an hour looking at what do grads actually feel and think about this AI, this Gen AI world that we're all living in today. And I was actually really shocked. I mean, every article, if not almost every article, was negative. AI is going to take your job away. You're feeling threatened by AI, new roles are not going to be there and all of that stuff. Great. Okay. All I'm going to say to you is take this with a grain of salt, right? Because the way you need to think of AI is, imagine a farmer during Victorian times, 1830s to 1901, being able to till only 4 acres a day with a horse and a manual till, right? Fast forward to the industrial age, and we can do a minimum of 40 acres with heavy machinery. So you have that time now to think and do something, your own upskilling, learning and development, all of that stuff, and maybe come up with a whole new different job, a whole new different, industry that you want to be a part in or take a part in, right? Now, the reality is, and I want to be absolutely honest, some jobs are definitely not going to be there. If you fast forward to maybe 20 years from now, some jobs are definitely going to be more impacted than others. But collectively, AI will actually be an efficiency help to us and less of a job taker, if you see what I'm saying. Think about it this way then. I was in Wales last year in the Snowdonia, and amazing place, by the way. And I went to the slate mines there and had a really nice tour. And the way it used to work back in those days, you had your whole family there. So the father, son, and the grandson would all work in this chamber. And if you were lucky to get a good chamber where you got good slate, then you would make a lot of money. And if you were unlucky, that's basically indentured labor for generations, right? Now, slate mining is gone. Their generations have now moved on, right? They've upskilled. They haven't disappeared. They've just upskilled and they're doing something else. And that's the concept we need to have, is that this is over a long period of time. These jobs are not just going to go away just like that. So a long period of time, because there's a long time to learn, upskill, and train ourselves to do something that actually we benefit from, right? So number 2, Don't trust everything you see or hear, just like that hippo in the desert with the unicorn horn. So this is interesting. Again, these are all images I've generated. I went to DALL-E, actually ChatGPT 4, which has DALL-E in it. And I said, well, give me an image of a man dressed in a suit. I got that. I said, give me an image of a chairperson of a Fortune 500 company. I got that. Chairperson is gender neutral. Okay. I said, professional HR women. I got that. And a generic professional HR. Got that. Do they look like us? They walked out of GQ. For those who read GQ, I love GQ, by the way. No, they don't. They don't represent society. They don't represent the culture we live in. They don't represent the dynamic world where we live in, right? So that's the problem. There is something called bias in AI. This is where it comes from. You have data bias from incorrect sampling, all of that. You have training bias where the training hasn't been correctly or fed in or over-indexed or under-indexed certain features in that training. We call it algorithmic bias. And then the last one, society, bias in society and humans. Let's be honest, we're all biased one way or another. This is the nature of who we are, right? We cannot change that. But if one person creates a model, that person feeds into that model with her or their bias, right? And oftentimes what happens is you've got a model which has very little explainability, meaning if somebody looks at that model, they will have a very hard time understanding what really is the model telling us. There is no explainability. And oftentimes, believe it or not, it's a black box. And that leads on to a biased output, right? So you have a foundation model that is biased, you get a biased output, and you've got other models being built off the back of this. And you can imagine the perpetuation of bias, and just goes on and on and on. And a good example of this would be, I think it was Amazon who had this recruitment tool, and they realized that tool was over-indexing more CVs that had male CVs than female CVs, which was interesting. And they were like, okay, we're going to manually, kind of get them to par, and they made some adjustments, and and then they realized still it was kind of looking and still giving them a high proportion of CVs that were written by men than women. And they were like, what is going on? Then they started looking into it. They spent a good chunk of time, and then realized there were certain keywords like what was it, executed and so on, that the model was correlating to men and was picking up those words in those CVs as a good CV versus other words that didn't have that. So it was kind of disregarding that. So again, you see, it's very hard, and we need to crack this box open, right? The other thing to think about is, where is this coming from then, right? And there's loads of articles, lots of research done. I mean, Google's entire workforce, forget how many thousands of them are there, 2.5% of them are actually Black, right? And if you look at just AI researchers in general, about 72% of them are men. So that has an impact in what these models are built off of, right? I mean, we put our biases in that. So we need diversity. It's critical for these models to work. We need that diversity to actually to infer and give us the right output. And it's not just about diversity in gender or ethnicity. We need educational diversity. We need people who are working who have studied history, arts, humanities in general, and so on. Because the best team you can actually have is a core team of research data scientists who are very much a physics major or a math major, STEM and all of that, supported by a very diverse team who can bring in that critical thinking, the external thinking that oftentimes, when people like me sometimes work on things, we forget. So they keep us grounded, and that's absolutely critical. So number 3 then, diversity is key. It is absolutely key to these foundational models. And I think we all have a role to play there, because this is, like I said earlier, and you keep hearing from me, an inflection point for us to play a part, to make sure that the AI systems that are being built actually is of benefit to us, and it's not going to be discriminatory. So if that's what what you can do, what are companies really looking for then, right? This is my view, and I think I'm sure that's what companies are doing as well. If I was to hire someone and set up a team, I would be looking at these skill sets. So soft skills. I'm looking for creativity and having a growth mindset. I'm looking for an eagerness to learn, because this curiosity and eagerness to learn is what's going to move you forward. Communication skills is really important as well. I'm also looking at what I call non-technical tech skills. I just made it up, but I don't think these are technical skills. But it's basically uncommon understanding of AI prompts. How do you create a persona when you're actually prompting? I've seen people using ChatGPT and like, well, write me something. I'm thinking, okay, you're going to get an answer, but it's not going to be exactly what you want. Like they get 5, 6, 7 tries to never get what they want, because they're not specifying the persona that they want it as. So it's really important, right? ChatGPT has been trained on many personas as well. So and keep picking on ChatGPT, but you can imagine other chatbots as well. A general understanding of the industry and the ethical awareness of the industry, the regulations coming down. These things don't require anyone to have a law degree. It requires you to be curious. Having some foundational statistics is from high school, right? We all had to take it. Having understanding of linear algebra means you can understand how vectors work. You can understand how arrays work. These things are, I think, in my opinion, quite basic. You can brush it off fairly quickly, pick up a book here and there, go to Coursera or Udemy, and pick up some of those foundational courses. It's really, really quick. It's nothing too complicated. It's not going to get you a degree, and you're not going to be a master statistician, but it gives you enough skill sets to have a knowledgeable conversation and understand some of those research data scientists, some of those people really working in this and what they're really building, so you can actually influence them. The other thing that I expect people to know are some common understanding of programming languages. I don't want people to come in and actually, fire up, Python and start building an algorithm, but I do want them to understand, what scikit-learn is, right? What types of cloud environments are out there, and what does it mean? You've got OpenAI Azure and what's really happening with OpenAI, Microsoft Azure, and what's happening with Azure Fabric and so on and so forth, right? What's MLOps, the framework, across machine learning platforms that you can adopt, and things like that. Again, it's just a curiosity to learn. And to me, that would be, if a candidate like this comes up, and that would be an ideal candidate. You've got to check all the boxes: eagerness to learn, being able to do things. And I don't expect that person to be a programmer yet, being able to understand a programming language, So that's what companies are looking for, okay? So what can you do then? Almost to the end then. What can you do? I think number one, embrace AI and be part of the solution. This, again, like I said earlier, is an inflection point for all of us. We need to be out there, be in LinkedIn, join some of those forums, and post your thought in those forums. It's really important. Join Kaggle and be a part of Kaggle, understand what's happening in the broader context of AI, and also understand, how people are using these models. I think it's really important for all of us, a diverse group of people, to have a say in this, because the less, of this we do, we won't be able to complain too much there down the road, right? So similar to some of the elections that's happened recently in UK as well. So, we need to be an active part in that. Let's not just step away from it. Number two, understand the limitations in AI. AI is not a solution to everything, right? And it's massively limited in its form, in the form of artificial narrow intelligence. So we need to know that, and we need to learn about it, and we need to tell others about it, okay? Third, as I said earlier, you can play a huge part in this ecosystem by not having a mathematical degree, or by not having a physics degree, not having any STEM degree. You can be a history major and still play a big part in AI by being able to just understand some of those concepts, being able to talk about it and influence others and be part of the team. Because really what we need today, my view, again, are not more STEM majors. I think what we need today is a more holistic group of people who can work together and influence some of those STEM majors who are actually working with some of the deep end of AI. And together we can build something. Number four, plenty of online courses out there. Plenty. I mean, where you can start with zero foundational knowledge and become zero to hero in no time, 6 times. All it needs is your curiosity and eagerness to learn. And yeah, just if you have that, you can play a big part in AI. Just a list of some of the things that's on my playlist then, ChatGPT Complete Guide is really great. I'll share this with the link. So I think Herman, you can share that as well. ChatGPT Complete Guide is great because it also talks about large language models in general. I think it's really useful to know how encoders and decoders kind of work as well. Python with Jose Portela, Python Data Science, Machine Learning Bootcamp. It's brilliant. I mean, I've gone to it so many times because I don't remember half the things I read. So I always have to kind of go back and learn again. Intro to Probability and Statistics. I actually took statistics. I had to for accounting in university, and I forgot every single thing. So I kind of got back into AI and data science and data. This was one of the courses that I took online, and kind of everything started to kind of make a lot more sense then. Number 4 is a great one if you just want to understand generally what AI can do. Number 5, again, I mentioned linear algebra is quite important for you to understand how AI models work. It's the foundation, the cornerstone of math that it uses, and just having that basic foundational understanding will help you a lot. Cool. We're almost to the end now. We are at the end, actually. So thank you for your time. Again, I want to reiterate one thing. We're all in this together. This is a point in time where we can, I think, make a difference. Whether in the company where you're already working, or whether you're just about to start work, or whether you're looking for work, get yourself a good understanding what AI is all about. Every company is exploring it. Many companies are at different stages of their exploration. Some companies are trying to adopt AI at scale. All that's going on. So this is a great opportunity to influence. And most companies, I think, we're doing that in the company where I'm at. We're building a community. And that community, like I said earlier, you've got people who are very much into the deep end of AI, but we also have this halo around these people with various skill sets who have very little understanding of math, but want to play a part in AI. And my feedback to them is go and understand what's happening in AI, and let's all work on this together. So again, for all of us here, we're all in this together. And again, thank you very much. I hope this was useful. And I guess we're off to questions. No, I think we can't hear you, Karim. I don't know why. Maybe it's me.
Oh, there we go. Hello, can you hear me now? There
Yes,
we go.
yes, thanks.
Apologies. Yeah, thank you so much, Sajjad, for sharing your knowledge with us today. If anyone does have any questions, please type them in the chat right now, and then we can get back to those. But yeah, I was really intrigued actually about the AI biases. I didn't realize, I wasn't aware personally that that was actually an issue. So I'll definitely be, I'll definitely be looking into that for sure as well myself. But yeah, you've really covered a lot of bases there, Sajjad. Thank you. So I know Diana said, are we going to be sharing the slides? Yes, we can send the slides in an email after this as well, along with all of the resources as well, all the links too. We've got a question. What would you say are the immediate impact of AI on retail?
Oh, huge. Yeah, personalization, is one of those big things. There's actually this whole omnichannel experience as well, right? So imagine going to a shop and being able to have a, almost like a digital mirror you can actually look at, and that this dress or this outfit or shoe or whatever, looks great. And then you kind of order right then and there, kind of arrives at your own destination at home or anywhere you want to send it to. But the whole point around that is, the data it collects and the personalization actually can drive for you. And this has been going on for a long time. It's small little increments, obviously, but it's more about the next best action, the next best offer. Very similar to what's happening, if you look at Amazon, you buy X and it will recommend Y. And in many cases, it actually does a good job in understanding what you would be preferring to buy. There's a really interesting story. I actually don't know if it's true or not, but it's been talked about for a long time. This person in the US, Target is a departmental, well, it's a supermarket, I think, in the US, and this family started receiving vouchers for baby for diapers and things like that, for nappies, and the dad was like, "This is crazy, irrelevant. Why are you sending me all of this and all of that kind of stuff, right?" They had I think, a 17-year-old daughter. And it turns out that the daughter was actually pregnant and actually was going to Target and buying certain things. So this is, again, an element of how these models work and actually do this recommendation for you. In this case, didn't work out very well, obviously, as you can imagine. But that's how AI is actually influencing. And again, this is the broader context of AI. Remember, you've got AI, you've got machine learning as part of AI as well. The other thing, I think, from a Gen AI perspective, as I mentioned earlier, it's about creativity. It's about being able to create these concepts and these designs and being able to create an ad using Gen AI that is very much targeted to you. So imagine, your preferences, would be very different than my preferences. And imagine a generative AI can actually create something that I like in terms of maybe, something like a Millennium Falcon 2.0 or something, right? And it's able to send that to me saying, would you be interested in that? And we have a company that customizes existing Millennium Falcons and be able to bring this new customized Millennium Falcon 2.0 to you. So it's kind of like that, right? So it's a very, very interesting world we live in today with Gen AI.
Lovely, thank you, Sajjad. And we've got a few more questions. So what ethical considerations do you believe are most important for the future development of AI?
Yeah, I mean, plenty. I think if you look at the AI Act, I'll try to share that with you, a consumable version, because obviously it's been written by lawyers, so it's very long. It's really interesting. They're looking at prohibitive AI use cases, and some of them are like using AI in the workplace. So there was one example, I think it was a recent one, this person who was being interviewed, who was working for a company, was made redundant and was asked to apply for that role again. The AI only saw her up to her neck, I think. And while she knew how to do her job, her body language wasn't there. And so the AI said that, by the way, yeah, sorry, but we're not going to hire you, right? And that was quite interesting. So those use cases are absolutely prohibitive. I think I posted it on LinkedIn as well recently. There are others where taking images from public CCTV cameras and using them are also prohibited. There's a long range of things that are absolutely things that cannot happen. So we have to kind of work with the law. And I think it's a great start. There are also many gray areas where you could potentially say, well, I'm not sure it's prohibited, I'm not prohibited, like AI in the workplace, right? So if you are, can you use AI to measure sentiment in your workplace and figure out how many employees are going to churn or how many employees are not happy? Is that prohibitive? To some extent, you can look at the law and might be like, yeah, it is. At the same time, you can say, well, no, they're not, right? So there are many gray areas. I think, it's a good start. I think, it needs to be really solid. At the same time, we cannot leave a lot of those to interpretation, because what then happens is it'll start creeping into the innovation life cycle. And then companies are going to step back and say, well, hang on a second, yeah, we're too worried about this, so we're just not going to do anything about it. So yeah, those are just some ethical considerations. Of course, you can stretch that to AI that can kill and all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things there as well, but yes.
Thank you. And just the last couple of questions before we head off. So someone's asking, please, if there are any AI boot camps set up
Yes.
for beginners.
Yeah, so Kaggle has quite a few. And actually, what I'll do is I'll share some links. I think that might be easier. And so Kaggle, if you haven't interacted with Kaggle, it's brilliant. It's free and it's for almost everyone. So you don't have to be professional, but there's some proper research scientists there who are doing some really, really amazing piece of work. But you can work with that data set. There's a very famous data set called the Titanic data set, where you can learn machine learning, you can use, which is AI basically, and think about if you could save more passengers, if the ship window was a bit bigger, for example, things like that. Really interesting data sets out there. So I'll share some links, but also remember, I'll share the playlist, and as part of most of those playlists, I know Jose Portella's one, there is a boot camp towards the end. I can't remember if it's with Kaggle or not, but it's a really, really cool one that you can actually join.
Thank you. And just one last question from Elena. What about the implication of AI on the accounting profession?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about generative AI and how it can actually look at multiple data sets, you could say that you could unleash that, and it can come back to you with your P&L. The reality is that, it's not perfect, right? It can actually be efficient to combine multiple data sets, but you still have to look at the results and come up with some interpretation. And especially in the accounting profession, you cannot leave things to chance. I'm an accountant myself. Things got to balance out, in reality. And if it doesn't balance out, you've got to really explain what it is. So the way AI, especially generative AI, can work in that instance is that it can definitely help you, but doesn't mean that that profession is going to go away, and actually will give you more time to dive into some of the areas where you probably didn't have time before. Auditing is another area where I think AI will have a huge implication, right? Instead of sitting and looking at this, putting in journal entries, you're able to unleash that, and should come back to you with some of those flags where you need to focus your attention. So while yes, you don't have to look at a huge chunk of data, you will still have to look at data. You will still have to look at those outputs. You'll still have to interpret those outputs and come back with your findings, right? So it will be helpful for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank
educating
you.
us all on AI and answering everyone's questions.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you to those who have attended today as well. As mentioned before, the webinar will be online for you to watch back. And for all those who are watching right now, I will email you with the slides and the link to the video and any resources that Sajjad mentioned earlier. And for those not watching live, all the links are below in the description. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
It was a
you.
great,
Take care, guys.
insightful webinar. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.